I live on the far edge of a quiet, rural town tucked against the shoulders of a lonely desert highway. It's the kind of place where time moves slow, where the main road is lined with a handful of aging buildings, a diner, a general store, 2 gas stations, and a motel that hasn't updated its sign since the 80s. The roads that shoot off the highway are just long stretches of dirt and gravel, leading to scattered homes, acres of overgrown land, and fields forgotten by time. My home sits just outside of town, about 40 acres of brush, woods, and a creek that dries up in the summer. I work from home, so I rarely go out unless I need to. That evening was typical. I finished work around 6, closed my laptop, and made the 20-minute drive into town to grab some groceries. The store was quiet, like usual. Most folks in this area keep to themselves, and I've always liked that. I was halfway down the canned goods aisle when I noticed someone standing nearby. A man, average build, maybe in his late 30s, worn-out clothes, baseball cap pulled low. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe we just happened to glance at each other at the wrong moment. No big deal. But then I saw him again, 2 aisles over, no cart, no basket, just standing, still, watching. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe he was waiting on someone. Maybe he forgot what he came in for. But something about the way he stood there, too casual, too still. My stomach twisted a little, but I kept moving, grabbed what I needed, paid, and headed back out into the dusk. The parking lot was mostly empty, only about 24 cars scattered across the cracked pavement. Mine was parked way in the back, like always. I popped the trunk, tossed the bags in, and when I looked up, there he was again, the same man, standing between 2 parked cars, looking straight at me. No groceries, no receipt. Just there. It felt wrong, like something from a nightmare trying too hard to act normal. I got in the car and drove off without a second glance. The sun was gone now, leaving only streaks of orange melting into blue. The dirt roads out to my house were darker than usual, the wind kicking up little ghosts of dust as my tires crunched over gravel. I pulled into my driveway, which was nothing more than a cleared patch of dirt, and carried in the first load of groceries. I got distracted with a phone call from my brother. We talked for a while, just the usual stuff, until I remembered the rest of the bags still in the car. When I stepped back outside, the wind had died. It was silent. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that made your ears ring. That's when I saw it. A truck. No lights, no sound. Parked out in the open part of my land, maybe 50 yards off the dirt road, just barely visible under the moonlight. It wasn't there when I pulled in. I'm sure of it. I froze. It was just sitting there, like a shadow that shouldn't be. My heart picked up pace as my eyes adjusted to the dark, trying to figure out if someone was inside. The logical part of my brain tried to reason. Maybe someone pulled off the road, looking for a place to sleep. But this was private land, and they would have had to drive through part of my property just to get that far in. Still, I didn't go charging out there. I'm not stupid. You never know what someone might be capable of, especially in the dark, especially in the middle of nowhere. I grabbed the rest of the groceries quickly and went back inside, locking the door behind me. I kept peeking out through the living room curtains for a while. The truck didn't move, didn't flash its lights, nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself it had to be harmless. A long-haul trucker too tired to care about boundaries. An hour passed, then another. I finally shut the curtains and went upstairs to bed. I don't know how long I was asleep before something pulled me out of it. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was instinct. I opened my eyes and realized I had to use the bathroom. I was half asleep, dragging my feet across the hardwood floor. The house creaked like usual, but then I heard a different kind of creak. Downstairs, not part of the house settling, not the wind. This was slow, subtle, like weight shifting on old floorboards. I stopped. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, barely breathing. Then I did something stupid. I opened the bathroom door and closed it again, just to see if the noise had come from me. It hadn't. I stepped to the top of the stairs and looked down. It was pitch black. Only a sliver of moonlight stretched through the kitchen windows, casting pale silver across the walls. That's when I saw it, a shadow, moving on the wall in the hallway below. It shifted slowly, deliberately. Someone was down there, either inside the house or just outside the back door, close enough that the moonlight caught them. I couldn't tell which, and honestly, I didn't want to find out. I backed away, as slow and silent as I could, heart thundering in my ears. I got into my bedroom and shut the door softly, locked it. Then I grabbed my phone and called the police, whispering into the receiver. While I waited, I didn't hear anything for a while. Part of me began to think I'd imagined it. Maybe I was being paranoid. Then I heard it again. Creak. He was inside, moving slowly, cautiously, like he knew exactly where he was going. I crouched behind my bed, still on the line with the dispatcher, every second dragging like an hour. Then I heard another noise, this time a shuffle. He was in the living room now. Headlights flashed through the front windows, sirens, and chaos. I heard footsteps bolt across the floorboards, panicked, desperate. Then the sound of the front door flinging open. I peeked through the blinds, in time to see two officers chasing a figure across the dirt. Back toward the truck, parked in the field. They got him, and I recognized him instantly. It was the man from the store, the one who kept watching me. He had a weapon on him, claimed he was just trying to rob the place. Said he thought it was empty. But I was home. Lights on. Car parked right out front. He knew I was here. And he didn't come in with a bag to carry anything out. He didn't try to take anything. He didn't even go near the kitchen or the office. Just crept through the hallway. Like he was looking for someone. Looking for me. I still don't know how long he was watching the house that night. He could have been out there before I even got home, just sitting in that dark truck, waiting. Whatever his real plan was. I'm glad I'll never have to find out. But I still leave the porch light on now, every night. And I haven't parked in the back of that lot since. I was on the last leg of a long solo road trip last summer. Something I'd planned to decompress before diving back into work. I'd been visiting scattered friends and family across a few states, taking scenic routes to stretch the journey. On the final night, I booked a small rental cabin that was conveniently along my route home, about 2 hours away from where I'd stopped for dinner that evening. By the time I hit the gravel turnoff to the cabin, the sun had already dipped below the horizon. The place sat off a quiet, tree-lined road with no nearby homes or signs of life. Just a sparse sprawl of farmland and thick woods pressing in from all sides. The driveway curved between 2 rows of unnaturally perfect pine trees, like someone had planted them with surgical precision. The cabin itself was small but charming enough. There was a faint smell of cedar and fresh paint as I stepped inside. I unlocked the front door using a code that the rental app had sent earlier. The inside was cozy, clearly renovated to appeal to travelers. Fresh wood flooring, a little kitchenette, soft lighting. It felt peaceful. Isolated, yes, but peaceful. I didn't bother unpacking. I just dropped my duffel on the floor and sat at the small kitchen table to eat the fast food I'd grabbed along the way. Maybe 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. I froze, a fry halfway to my mouth. I hadn't heard any car pull up, no footsteps on the gravel, just a knock. I walked over and cracked open the door. Standing on the porch was a man, maybe mid-40s, tall, slightly hunched, shaved head, patchy beard streaked with gray. He wore work boots and an old flannel shirt stained at the chest, and there was a strange earthy odor coming off him, like damp leaves and sweat left out in the sun. "Hey there," he said, smiling. "Just wanted to make sure you got in okay. I'm the owner." I didn't remember the app saying anything about the owner showing up, but I figured maybe he lived on the property somewhere. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes, though. There was something off in the way he stared, like he was looking through me. Still, I thanked him, said everything was good, and wished him a good night. He nodded slowly, gave me that same odd smile, and walked off down the gravel path. I didn't close the door until I couldn't see him anymore. Back inside, I shook it off. Maybe he was just a lonely guy looking for some interaction. Still, something about him lingered. His smell, his silence, how he hadn't texted or called to say he'd be dropping by. I finished eating, took a quick shower, and got into bed with my phone. Outside, everything was quiet, eerily so. No wind, no bugs, just silence pressing up against the windows. Then came the second knock, harder this time. I shot upright in bed, heart racing. Again, no footsteps, no car, just sudden knocking in the middle of nowhere. I checked my phone, no messages, no calls. I crept into the living room, avoiding the creaky boards I remembered near the bathroom. The knocking came again, slow, deliberate. "Can you open the door, please?" The man's voice called through. "Just need to ask you something real quick." I didn't respond. Another knock. I backed away from the door, my eyes flicking to the window near the kitchen. The curtains were drawn, but the porch light cast enough of a shadow for me to see his silhouette standing perfectly still. He hadn't moved, just waiting. "I'm really sorry," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's late. If it's not an emergency, I'd appreciate being left alone for the night." Silence. Unnatural silence. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, barely breathing, no retreating footsteps, no voice, just stillness. Then I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. One of the side windows, next to the couch, had a faint reflection in it. I turned my head slightly and felt my stomach drop. He was standing outside the window, just staring in, eyes locked onto mine, no expression, no blinking, just standing there like he belonged there. I bolted for the bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. The dispatcher stayed on the line while I whispered what was happening. I could barely get the words out when I heard something outside the bedroom window. A soft, metallic clicking sound, like someone trying to slide the window open. My breath caught. Why was he trying to get in that way? If he was the owner, he would have had keys. Why sneak around the windows? That's when I knew. I'd been wrong. That man wasn't the host. He wasn't anyone I should have trusted. And I'd opened the door for him. The police showed up about 10 minutes later. I stayed locked in the bedroom until they called out to me. By then, the man was gone. They searched the property, but didn't find him. He'd vanished into the woods. The cabin had no cameras, no fence, just miles of darkness in every direction. We later got in touch with the real owner, who lived 3 hours away. He hadn't sent anyone. No one was supposed to be there that night but me. To this day, no one knows who that man was. He never tried to steal anything, never broke in. He didn't even leave any signs behind. He just watched, waited, and knocked. And sometimes I still wonder, if I had opened that door a second time, what exactly would have happened? Because something tells me it had nothing to do with asking a question. It was the beginning of spring break when everything happened. I had just turned 18, and my family decided on a quiet escape. A week-long trip to a remote cabin deep in the northern woods of a state we'd never really explored before. It was just me, my mom, and my 7-year-old brother. We weren't just there for a vacation either. Part of the idea was to check out some of the smaller surrounding towns, see if any of them felt like home. My mom had been dreaming about leaving the city for a while. The cabin she found looked fine online, and it was cheap. Too cheap. But I don't think she realized how far out it really was. The nearest sign of civilization was a town about 40 minutes away, and even that was just a grocery store, a gas station, and a diner that closed by 6 p.m. We arrived after a long 10-hour drive, most of it silence and pine trees. The last stretch was just a narrow, winding road surrounded by thick forest. As we pulled up to the cabin, the sun was bleeding out behind the tree line, casting a warm orange across the tops of the trees. It was beautiful, but there was something hollow about it, like the kind of beauty you admire with your guard up. The cabin was old, the kind of old that creaked when no one was moving and had doors that didn't close quite right. The wood felt soft in spots, like it had soaked in too many winters. Still, it had a certain charm, at least for the first few hours. We unpacked, tried out the fireplace, made a quick dinner, and settled in. My mom went to bed early. My brother crashed soon after, and I was left awake with too much energy from napping during the drive. I decided to step outside and breathe in some of the cold night air. There was a small back deck that faced the woods. A sketchy fire pit sat in the middle of it, surrounded by some folding chairs that had definitely seen better days. I grabbed a few dry logs I'd seen stacked near the edge of the cabin and lit a fire, expecting it to flicker out fast. To my surprise, it caught quickly, casting a warm glow over the deck and stretching faint shadows toward the tree line. For the first 20 minutes, it was peaceful, more peaceful than I'd ever felt in the city. Just the crackling of the fire and the soft rustle of wind through the trees. No sirens, no neighbors yelling through paper-thin apartment walls, just nature. But then I heard something, a sharp, single crack echoing from deep in the woods. Not an animal, not a branch falling. No, it sounded deliberate, like someone swinging something heavy into a tree. A thick wooden thud that didn't repeat. I froze, listening. The fire popped behind me, but the woods were still, too still. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a deer brushing past a branch. Maybe the trees shifting in the cold. But something about the way it had sounded. It stuck with me. I doused the fire, went back inside, and locked the door behind me. My mom and brother were still asleep, the faint glow from their rooms leaking into the hallway. I tried to shake it off, sat in the living room, and queued up a downloaded movie on my phone. I figured I'd just tire myself out. But not even 20 minutes in, I heard something else, this time much closer. A soft shuffle against the outer wall of the cabin, right near the living room window. I paused the movie and sat completely still, hear the only sound now, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. There was no movement in the trees, no wind howling through the cracks, just silence, until a slow, deliberate knock hit the front door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a heavy, forceful set of bangs that rattled the frame. I stood up, slowly, and my mom came out of her room, wide-eyed and whispering, "What was that?" I told her someone was at the door. Her face went pale. She grabbed her phone and hurried back toward her room to call 911. Meanwhile, I crept to the door and peeked through the peephole. It was pitch black out front, but I could make out a silhouette, a tall figure standing just off the porch steps, unmoving, arms at his side. He wasn't trying to talk. He didn't call out for help. He just stood there, staring at the door like he was waiting for something. And then I saw what was in his hand, a heavy, splintered axe, the kind you split logs with. Except there was no firewood in his other hand, no backpack, no signs of anyone being lost or looking for help. Just that axe, and a whole lot of silence. I felt myself step back from the door, like my body made the choice before I did. The man slammed the door again, harder this time, louder. My mom was still on the phone with the dispatcher, whispering our location the best she could. We didn't even know the exact address, just the rough directions she used to find the place online. The man outside never said a word, not a plea for help, not a threat, not even a breath loud enough to hear. Just knock after knock after knock. Then came the sound that still haunts me. A sickening crack as the axe blade split into the wood of the door. A splinter shot through and clattered onto the floor. That's when we grabbed my brother, ran to the farthest bedroom, and barricaded ourselves in. We heard more blows to the door. 3, 4, maybe 5. Then silence. No footsteps, no retreat. Just silence thick enough to choke on. 15 minutes passed before red and blue lights finally flickered through the trees. A deputy was first on the scene, followed by 2 more officers not long after. The door had deep gashes in it, proof that he wasn't just trying to scare us. But there were no signs of the man, no footprints, no trail, no noise in the woods, nothing. The officers did a quick sweep and stayed with us until we packed our things and left that same night. We didn't even talk about staying the rest of the week. And as for my mom's dream of rural life, that ended the moment the blade split through the door. We never figured out who that man was, or why he was out there with an axe. Some people say maybe he was a squatter, living off-grid in the woods who didn't like strangers near his territory. Others think he might have been stalking the cabin, waiting for someone to be alone. But the one theory that sticks with me the most, he saw the campfire. Out there, alone in the woods, the only light for miles. Maybe that fire didn't warm me up that night. Maybe it just invited him in. Whatever the truth is, we'll never know, but I haven't gone camping since, and I probably never will.